Sixth UFC main event for Jairzinho Rozenstruik, which is more than any current UFC champion except John Jones. Card was indeed not a great one, but still we got some memorable moments including 6 knockouts which will not be forgotten very soon. Let's recap UFC Vegas 87 Rozenstruik vs Gaziev with some of the crazy fun facts you may not know. I'm the Indian accent guy and you are on the fight book. The preliminary card kicked off with a lightweight bout where Loic Radzhabov spoiled Abdulkarim Al-Selwadi's UFC debut via third round knockout. He looked to slow down in the second round but flipped the script in the third to improve his UFC record to 2 wins and 1 loss. On the other hand, Dana White's Contender Series alumni Al-Selwadi got his 5-fight win streak broken. Next was again a lightweight fight where Rodovit Klein spoils another debut via TKO in the first round. It was just a third finish in UFC history stemming from a front kick to the body. He joins Alexander Volkov and Dan Hooker. Rodovit is now on a 5-fight unbeaten streak in the UFC, which should be enough to get a spot in the main card. AJ Cunningham had accepted this fight on just 5 days' notice, coming as a 1-6 underdog, so the result was not something we didn't expect. In the middleweight bout, Christian Leroy Duncan put on his best UFC performance by far, finally living up to the expectation and defeating Ribeiro in the second round via technical knockout to get his second straight finish. He improves to 3-1 in the UFC while his opponent downs to 1-3 in the promotion. Ariel Helwani aka Ayman Zahabi snatches Javed Basharat's 0 by unanimous decision. It was his 4th straight win in the UFC with 2 first-round finishes, and he was the underdog in all of them. His 4-fight win streak is the 4th longest active win streak in the bantamweight division. Basharat, on the other hand, was 14-0 undefeated with a 4-fight unbeaten streak in the UFC, and despite being a -900 favorite, he lost the fight, and now his UFC record is 3 wins, 1 loss and 1 no contest. Next bout was a bantamweight clash between 2 debutants. Dana White's Contender Series alumni Vinicius Oliveira vs Bernardo Supai, who also took this fight on less than a week's notice. But unlike Cunningham, he fought amazingly. During the weigh-ins, Supai threatened Oliveira to knock him out, but the sight was totally opposite in the octagon. After 2 hard-fought rounds, Oliveira scores an insane flying knee knockout in the third, which will definitely be knockout of the year contender at the end of this year. This hard-fought victory not only earned him a performance bonus, but the fight of the night bonus as well. Sopai's 3-fight finish streak was broken and he was helped out of the octagon by 3 people after that brutal finish. Eric Anders got himself back into the win column by defeating Jamie Pickett via unanimous decision in the featured prelims. He is now 8-8 in the UFC, winning 2 out of his last 3. Pickett announced his retirement after this 5th straight loss. He retires with a UFC record of 2 wins and 7 losses and overall MMA record of 13 wins and 11 losses. Steve Erceg kicked off the main card in a violent way when he landed a picture-perfect hook to knock out Matt Schnell. He is now 3-0 in the UFC and would be a top 10 in next rankings update. In his post-fight interview, he called out Brandon Moreno. Schnell, on the other hand, lost back-to-back fights via second-round knockouts, and he is now 1-3 in his last 4 while 6-6 in his UFC career, which means he is going to be kicked out of the top 10. Umar Nurmagomedov remains undefeated, improving his record to 17-0 after a dominant win over Bekzat Almakhan. Nurmagomedov survives an early knockdown to win a decision by 30-25, 30-26 and 30-26 scorecards. He is now on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC with 3 finishes. In his post-fight interview, he called out Corey Sandhagen for a #1 contender fight and then showed his support for Gaza. His opponent Bekzat Almakhan fought well but looked the same as Arman Tsarukyan looked against Islam Makhachev in his UFC debut. Almakhan got his 8-fight win streak broken. Mokaev also remains undefeated and gets the unanimous decision win over Alex Perez. His personal best for significant strikes landed in a UFC fight was just 21. Unofficially, he connected with 36 in only round 1. He moves to 12-0 and calls for the title fight in Brazil at UFC 301. His 6-fight win streak with 4 finishes is the longest active win streak in the flyweight division. Perez is now on a 3-fight losing streak and 6-4 overall in his UFC career. He is winless since June 2020. And here is a fun fact that he and Schnell were scheduled to fight 4 times between 2021 and 2022. However, the fight never happened. They both fought this weekend at UFC Vegas 87 against different opponents and both lost their fights. Another win added to the undefeated record of Vitor Petrino. 11-0 Petrino is now on a 4-fight win streak with 2 finishes in the UFC. His opponent Tyson Pedro bowed out of the octagon following the 3-round battle. After a 6-5 run in the UFC, Pedro announces his MMA retirement and lays his gloves down in the octagon. So there were 2 retirements in the same card. Pedro's overall MMA record is 10 wins and 5 losses. He said he might need to rob someone in the parking lot due to taxes and the loss at UFC Vegas 87. Jairzinho Rozenstruik gets the doctor stoppage over Shamil Gaziev and wins the main event after referee Mark Goddard waves it off after round 4 and saved everyone watching around the world. Biggie Boy is now 2-1 in his last 3 bouts, but overall he wins 8 and lost 5 in the UFC. All of 8 wins came via knockout or technical knockout. Shamil Gaziev was the last of the 5 undefeated fighters on the card and only second of those who lost their oath. From the first fight of the prelims of UFC 296 to the main event of UFC Vegas 87, he is the first of the fighters to headline an Apex card who made their pro debut after the UFC started doing shows at the Apex on May 30, 2020. With an overall MMA record of 12 wins and only 1 loss, he is now 1-1 in the UFC. The event ends with the hope that we will get Rozenstruik versus Derek Lewis next, as Rozenstruik said that the UFC matched him up against Derek Lewis at the end of 2023. But the fight didn't happen because Curtis Blades got injured and Lewis took the Jailton Almeida fight on short notice in Sao Paulo. And that's all for now. I'll see you again tonight with the salary data of these fighters. So till then, do whatever you want.